A mysterious letter holds the key to redemption. The worn linoleum floor of the small-town office echoed beneath Jack Sullivan's stiff boots. The waiting room was suffused with muted light, afternoon sun slipping through dusty blinds in dull stripes across faded wallpaper. His fingers tightened, brushing nervously against the frayed fabric of his military jacket, the same one he had worn on countless missions but which here felt like a burden of alien threads. Across the room, a receptionist tapped her pen briskly, eyes flicking away like a bird disturbed by a looming shadow. The old clock ticked steadily, each click carving time into Jack's growing unease. A middle-aged man emerged from a back-office Doris suit, sharp, eyes colder still. His voice was clipped, devoid of welcome or warmth. "Mr. Sullivan, we've reviewed your application and, frankly, we don't think you're a good fit for the position." Jack swallowed hard, his gaze flickering briefly toward the framed certificates that lined the room, achievements and honors that felt like relics from another life. "I see," he replied quietly, swallowing the knot of frustration that tightened steadily in his throat. The man's gaze was steely, unyielding. "We're looking for someone who can move forward, not dwell on the past. We can't risk liabilities." Jack's jaw clenched. The word, liability, floated in the stale air, a cold cut sharper than any battlefield wound. He managed a nod without protest, retreating silently to the shadowed nook near the exit. The distant rumble of a parade rehearsal drifted faintly through the cracked window, a cheerful contradiction to his heavy heart. The muted chirp of trumpets, the shuffling of boots, the calls of organizers planning marches. Life moving forward. Without him. Outside, the late afternoon sun filtered through amber leaves, casting fractured light across the cracked pavement. The scent of dry earth mingled with distant smoke. Jack's eyes caught the glint of a tarnished army badge pinned to his chest, its edges worn and soft with time, a relic of valor and sacrifice that seemed nearly erased by rejection. He stepped outside, the warmth of the sun ill-fitting, unable to thaw the chill curling deep beneath his ribs. A soft breeze stirred loose papers blown across the sidewalk, forgotten fragments dancing aimlessly. Jack's gaze fell to the ground as he passed an abandoned lot, where a broken fence leaned precariously against rusted machinery. The fence was a fractured boundary, a silent metaphor of his own fragmented place in the world. Behind him, the distant cymbal clash of the parade echoed a reminder of community, of purpose, of belonging. Yet here he stood, alone amidst the hollow stillness of a silent street. He tucked the badge beneath a worn hand, fingers trembling slightly as invisible scars demanded reckoning. A stray dog padded cautiously from the shadows of an alley, watching Jack with wary, intelligent eyes, an unexpected companion in the quiet desolation. Jack met the gaze, fatigue and hope flickering briefly within, a whispered promise that even amidst dismissal, redemption remained unwritten. As the sun dipped lower, casting long, mournful shadows, Jack Sullivan turned away from the closed door, stepping into the uncertain twilight, the heavy veil of rejection lingering, but beneath it, the fragile stirrings of a journey yet to begin. Jack slipped through the narrow streets, the sound of his boots swallowed by the cold breath of dusk. Shadows lengthened beneath fading amber leaves, which carpeted cracked sidewalks and weary porches with a brittle pathway. The wind, subtle and insistent, pulled at his threadbare jacket, as though urging him forward even as each step felt a struggle against invisible chains. Alone in his cramped apartment, the sparse furniture seemed to crowd him, a bed with a sagging mattress, a small wooden chair dug into the corner, walls stained with time and neglect. Jack's fingers graze an old army badge lying atop a faded photograph on the chipped tabletop. Metal cold and edges worn, it was at once a relic of identity and the source of haunting memories. The weight of rejection and unspoken pain pressed against him like the dusty sun filtering weakly through grimy windows. Flames from a lonely candle flickered, casting trembling light onto a scarred face hardened by years of battles fought, both abroad and within. Jack's eyes, a muted gray, clouded with memories. The roar of gunfire, the sharp crack of war, and silence broken by screams carried only on the wind. Beneath it all, the ache of being invisible in a world that expected him to have moved on to shed the past like tattered armor. The room echoed with the absence of voices that once surrounded him, mates turned strangers, loved ones kept at bay by walls built from pain. He pulled the jacket tighter around himself, fingers trembling as the silence pressed heavier and the past crept with cold claws. Suddenly, a soft scratching sound at the door broke through a stray dog, its eyes wary but unwavering, pawing insistently for entry. Jack hesitated, shadows swirling about him like ghosts, before opening a narrow crack. The dog slipped inside, a quiet presence amid desolation, warmth moving through the chill. It nuzzled against his leg, a small weight anchored in unspoken companionship. Jack knelt slowly, hands rough but gentle, brushing dirt from the animal's fur, a flicker of unexpected kindness igniting in the desolate room. In that shared breath between man and creature, a faint spark took hold. Not yet healing, but a beginning, a gesture soft as dusk and fragile as the stray's trembling frame. Outside, the last embers of daylight faded into twilight, and Jack sat with the dog beside him, shadows pooling but the quiet company staving off the dark, if only slightly. The room, once hollow and cold, held a fragile warmth, the kind that grows slowly, unevenly, promising that even in places worn thin by loss, a seed of hope might find soil to take root. The twilight pressed gently against the edges of the small town as Jack walked the narrow dirt road leading from the interview room toward the familiar isolation of his home. The fading sun touched broken fences and autumn-kissed fields with a muted gold, casting long shadows that folded over the past and stretched into an uncertain future. His footsteps slowed, heavy with the weight of rejection and the dull ache of battles fought on fronts far beyond the eye. A sudden rustle beside the pathway stirred the stillness. Eyes, deep and wary, reflected the low light. A stray dog, thin and scruffy, paused in the doorway of the woods. Jack met the creature's hesitant gaze, a flicker of recognition sparking amidst the weariness. The dog took a hesitant step forward, then another, drawn by a silent understanding born of loneliness endured. Jack hesitated, his own hand trembling slightly as he reached into his pocket, fingertips brushing the worn edges of an old army badge, a symbol of valor, now a reminder of scars hidden beneath soldiers' resolve. The dog edged closer, tail low but wagging just enough, tentative companionship offered in quiet persistence. Jack knelt slowly, his weathered face illuminated by the smoldering hues of sunset. The world around them fell away, leaves drifting like forgotten memories, wind whispering through skeletal branches. With a sigh that carried years of unspoken promise and buried hope, Jack extended a hand, fingertips brushing the coarse fur. The dog leaned into the contact, a fragile bridge across the chasm of isolation, a companionship unexpected but deeply needed. Jack's voice was a soft murmur, low and uncertain. "Looks like we're both a little lost." A faint breeze swept the open road, scattering leaves like fleeting moments, and the orange horizon glowed with the desolation and possibility of a day closing and another beginning. In that shared silence, amid cracked earth and quiet companionship, a seed stirred a tentative flicker amidst the shadows, signaling not the end, but the fragile start of change. As twilight deepened and stars pricked the vastening sky, Jack rose stronger, not by certainty but by a whisper of belonging. The dog trotted alongside, a guide in the dimming light, their paths now entwined in search of answers hidden beneath the layers of time and silence. And for the first time since the door had closed behind the interviewer's cold dismissal, Jack Sullivan stepped forward, not away but toward the unknown, carrying the weight of his past not as a burden, but as a lantern. The dawn broke slowly over the small rural town, soft light spilling like a tentative promise through the slatted curtains of Jack's modest home. Outside, the world-stirred birds chattered in the cold air, and the first hints of autumn breathed crisp and clean, scattering amber leaves in restless eddies across the cracked pavement. Jack stood by the window, silhouette hunched yet steady, watching the light push back the long shadows of night. The stray dog lingered at his feet, a quiet companion, shifting restlessly but unflinching. Its eyes, deep pools of unguarded trust, met Jack's with gentle insistency, a presence both unexpected and grounding amidst the residue of solitude that clung tightly to the veteran's soul. Jack's hand, rough and steady, reached down to grasp a frayed leash, the sound of clasped metal like a pact forged anew. The weight of the old army badge, nestled in his jacket pocket, pressed faintly against his ribs, their combined presence a whisper of identity and purpose. Outside, the chilly breeze tugged at his ragged jacket as the dog led the way, keen nose tracing scents unseen. The world was alive with the rustling hymn of branches and distant wood smoke, a tender testament to change beneath the ache. Together, they navigated the winding path to the community center. Worn brick and sagging porches marked the town's heart. Inside, muted voices echoed in the large hall, the faint clatter of folding chairs mingling with the hum of tentative greetings. Jack's steps faltered momentarily, memories flickering like tattered film frames. Drills in barren fields, the sharp bark of orders, faces lost to time and fading light. Yet the dog's steady presence kept him rooted. Approached by a volunteer coordinator, woman warm-eyed with patience, Jack was met with a kind but assessing gaze. "Glad you came back," she said softly, offering a worn clipboard. "We can always use helping hands." His reply was simple, voice grainy but imbued with a flicker of determination. "I want to be useful." Hours passed in quiet labor, sorting donations, painting faded walls, sharing nods and smiles that warmed cold places inside. The dog moved among them, a living symbol of companionate persistence, drawing tentative smiles from wary townsfolk. But beneath the surface, a storm brewed. Doubts gnawed at broken confidence, shadows whispering that acceptance was fleeting, and self-worth, fragile. Late afternoon arrived, clouds gathering leaden and low, promising rain. Jack's gaze caught a stray glance from a fellow volunteer, eyes flickering judgment or fear, and tension spiked unexpectedly. The dog whimpered softly, tail dipping, as Jack's own breath caught, a silent battle between stepping back and stepping further into light. He muttered through clenched teeth, "I'm not giving up yet." The first drops fell in hesitant taps upon the roof, mirroring the irregular pulse of a heart shifting perilously between despair and hope. Outside, the skies wept soft tears over cracked earth as Jack steadied himself, fingers brushing the old badge beneath his jacket, a talisman against the storm and a promise to forge forward yet deeper into the unknown. And in that fragile moment, beneath swelling clouds and uncertain skies, a decision crystallized, one that would carry him beyond the shadows into the next chapter, yet fraught with challenges that would test the very core of his resilience. The story held its breath, poised on the cusp of its unfolding revelation. The weight of the morning lay heavy as Jack walked along the cracked pavement to the community center, the stray dog at his heels a steadfast shadow in the soft haze of dawn. The muted amber light spilled, weaving through the skeletal trees lining the road, casting slow-moving patterns of light and shade that seemed to mirror the turbulence within his heart. Inside, the walls bore the scents of old wood and fresh paint, where volunteers hustled quietly, voices low and purposeful. Jack's hands trembled as he donned a faded vest, its fabric too large but welcoming. For a fleeting moment, he felt the tentative stirrings of belonging, like faint embers flickering to life beneath cold ash. But belonging is fragile. As the hours bled into the rhythms of sorting and cleaning, Jack's worn hands betrayed him missed a box's weight, dropped a fragile item. Eyes in the crowd flickered, a brief shadow of disapproval or perhaps doubt. Whispers clung to the dust-laden air, unwelcome reminders of perceived inadequacy. His jaw clenched, the sting of judgment sharper than any bullet wound. "You sure you're up for this?" A familiar voice cut through the hesitant tone of someone uncertain, yet firm. It was Mike, a once trusted comrade turned reluctant critic. Jack's reply was measured, steady despite the rising storm. "I'm here." "Isn't that enough?" Mike's frown deepened. "Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's asking for more than you can give." The words cut like cold steel, reeling beneath memories of comrades lost, of battles fought and forgiven. The dog nudged Jack's leg, a grounding presence amid the surging tides of doubt. Jack allowed a breath of silent acknowledgement that courage could coexist with fear. Outside, the sky darkened, as clouds gathered like sentinels heralding a storm. The air turned thick and electric, the scent of impending rain mingling with the earthy fragrance of trampled leaves. Jack paused at the cracked window, watching a branch lash against the glass. The storm threatened fragile moments of peace with its sudden violence. Back inside, a box tipped, spilling contents a mess of fragile glass, sharp shards scattering across the floor. Murmurs rose. Jack's heart plummeted. Apologies caught in his throat, mingled with the acute sting of perceived failure. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice barely above a breath. Mike's gaze softened but remained guarded. "We all have storms, Jack. Some leave scars." Jack nodded, the weight of the moment pressing him to the edge, but also a spark, the strange gift of shared pain connecting him to the community he doubted. The rain began to fall, heavy and relentless, beating a relentless tattoo against the roof, the rhythm marking a fragile new beginning amidst chaos. Jack's eyes flicked to the stray dog, now curled protectively beneath a Tablethair bond, an unspoken testament to survival and trust. The storm outside echoed the tempest within, unsettled, yet cleansing. As thunder rolled across gathering darkness, Jack inhaled deep, the scent of rain mingling with earth and hope. The afternoon waned, leaving shadows long and looming. And then, unexpectedly, the dog trotted up, dropping a dirty, folded piece of paper by Jack's feet, an old, faded letter, its origins unknown but its presence electric with promise. His gaze locked onto the worn script, words inked long ago, carrying secrets that would unravel the fragile seams of his guarded world. The room seemed to hold its breath, a silent herald of revelations to come. And as the rain streaked the window, blurring the outside into a watercolor of grays and greens, Jack bent low, gripping the letter like a lifeline to truths buried beneath years and silence. A flicker of resolve kindled within the depths of his shadowed soul. The story curled forwards, training against the storm, yearning toward light. The dusk settled over the small town like a fading sigh, the golden light bleeding softly into deepening shadows. Jack Sullivan stood at the edge of the cracked pavement, the old stray dog sitting patiently beside him, its tawny eyes reflecting a quiet understanding that words had long failed to express. The warmth of the setting sun spilled across Jack's weathered face, highlighting the creases drawn by years of pain and silent battles, and the faded army badge pinned loosely to his jacket caught the glow, a humble reminder of a past that haunted every step. In his hands, the dog dropped a folded letter, its paper aged and brittle, edges worn like the memories it contained. Jack unfolded it slowly, fingers trembling not from cold, but from the fragile hope entwining with dread. The ink was faded, the handwriting familiar yet distant, a ghost of a friend long thought lost. As the words revealed themselves, a tide of emotions surged, betrayal intertwining with sorrow, love with regret. The letter spoke not just of friendship and shared history but of secrets buried beneath years, truths guarded by silence and fear. Jack's breath caught. The weight of untold stories pressed down, threatening to crush yet gleaning the shards of courage that lingered beneath the surface. Flashes of memories ignited the grit and fire of battlefield nights, the camaraderie forged in blood and unspoken trust, moments stolen before the darkness claimed them. His voice trembled as he whispered into the chilling wind, "Why was I left in the dark?" The dog nudged him gently, a gesture of unwavering companionship amid the unraveling storm. Jack's eyes scanned the fading script repeatedly, each line stripping pretense, revealing fractures in long-held beliefs and unmasking a painful reality. The wounds of friendship as sharp as any battle scar, the cost of secrets more devastating than old wars. The earth beneath their feet seemed to echo with the weight of these revelations, the nearby broken fence a stark metaphor for fractured bonds and once solid foundations now splintered. As twilight folded deeper, the distant strains of a parade faded into silence, replaced by the haunting stillness of reckoning. Jack's resolute silhouette stood framed against the dimming day, holding in his hands not only a letter, but a key to a past that demanded confrontation and a future waiting to be reclaimed. The dog's steady presence was a silent promise no longer alone in the shadows. And as the final light slipped beyond the horizon, Jack Sullivan faced the dawning truth, poised on the edge of revelation that would fracture his world but also ignite the path toward redemption. The room was drowned in wavering shadows cast by a lone, flickering bulb hanging from a rusted wire. Outside, rain hammered on the roof with a relentless fury, each drop like a dull drumbeat echoing through the hollow chambers of Jack Sullivan's battered mind. The dim, sepia-toned glow barely illuminated his gaunt features, lined deep with years of regret and unspoken pain. Jack sank onto the creaking wooden floor, back pressed against the cold, peeling wallpaper that seemed to sag from the weight of silence more than gravity. His weathered jacket lay discarded nearby, the old army badge pinned crookedly to the ragged collar, a stark relic of battles fought long ago but never truly escaped. His breath came in shallow, uneven gasps, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and forgotten sorrow. The letter, once a fragile beacon of hope, now mocked him from crumpled folds beside an empty bottle, its ink smudged, the words a haunting chorus ripping through the facade of resilience. His eyes, glassy and distant, flashed uncontrollably with images of betrayal, faces from the past twisted in rage, friends whose voices turned cold, and the silent accusations of a society unwilling to heal the war's scars. The stray dog's soft whine from the corner barely stirred him. Its presence, once a balm, now failed to bridge the widening rift within his soul. He cradled his head in hollowed hands, fingers trembling as memories streamed relentlessly, flashbacks of fire and loss, comrades fallen, innocence shattered. A ragged whisper escaped, "I'm not worthy." His voice cracked, swallowed by the room's suffocating stillness. The walls seemed to close, the air heavy with the burden of years spent hiding from truths too raw to confront. Outside, the relentless rain blurred the outlines of the world as if trying to wash away the pain etched into every surface. The broken fence beyond the window groaned under the wind's assault, a fractured silhouette against the storm-darkened sky, symbolizing the fracturing within Jack's own heart. Minutes bled into hours, each tick of the worn clock like a dirge punctuating the slowly unraveling thread of hope. The dog inched closer, its warm presence a faint pulse against the cold tide, but Jack was adrift, a prisoner in his own despair, fingertips grasping at nothing but shadows. His eyes focused on the army badge once more, the cold metal whispering tales of valor and sacrifice that now felt like chains binding him to a past from which there was no escape. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the grinding abyss stretching before him, a descent marked by isolation, anguish, and the terrifying void of loss. And as the storm outside crescendoed into a howl, the room held its breath, the fragile man caught in the throes of a collapse so profound, It felt as if the very soul of Jack Sullivan was fracturing beneath the weight of unyielding grief. The night was thick with quiet, a suffocating silence that pressed its cold weight against the thin walls of Jack Sullivan's dimly lit apartment. Rain drummed steadily against the window pane, relentless and unyielding, pouring like a torrent of cold memories washing over the broken man within. The flickering light of a lone candle cast wavering shadows, painting grim strokes upon the worn floorboards and peeling wallpaper, mirroring the fractured state of Jack's soul. He sat in the darkened corner, knees drawn to chest, the faded army badge clenched tightly in his trembling hand. His graying hair, disheveled and damp, framed a face etched with exhaustion, eyes hollow, reflecting storms that raged far beyond the calm surface of the barren room. Outside, the world had disappeared into a blur of wet darkness. The only sound was the relentless percussion of rain and the occasional, ghostly whistle of wind threading through cracked panes. Each breath Jack drew was shallow, punctuated by the sharp sting of despair tightening like a noose around his ribs. Memories clawed their way through the fog, faces lost, voices drowned in silence, actions remembered with painful clarity. The boundaries between past horrors and present desolation blurred into a suffocating haze. His voice broke, barely a whisper swallowed by the void. "Is there peace left for me?" The stray dog, a constant presence through the turmoil, lay curled nearby, its warm breath a fragile pulse in the cold stillness. Jack's eyes flicked toward his silent companion, a fleeting flicker of connection glimmering in the depths of his despair. His gaze then drifted to the tattered letter resting on the floor, a promise left unread, words left unsaid. With trembling fingers, he reached for it, the fragile paper trembling under his touch. As the candle guttered, the letter's words seemed to dissolve into shadows, the ink blurring like tears falling in slow motion. The letter's question, unanswered, unresolved, hung in the air like a specter. Outside, a broken fence sagged against the rain, its splintered beams whispering tales of fractures irreparable, reflecting the ruin festering within Jack's heart. The desolation that clung to the landscape echoed his isolation, a man severed from belonging and tethered only by fragile memories. Time stretched endlessly, the steady ticking of a battered clock a metronome marking the slow unraveling of hope. Jack's breath faltered, his body shuddered as waves of cold and loneliness crashed relentlessly. The room constricted, the silence expanding to fill every crevice, every hollow space left by trust broken and love lost. And there, cradled in the dying light of flickering flames, Jack Sullivan descended deeper into the darkness, a shadow among shadows, lost to the world yet tethered by a whisper of unfinished stories. The night held its breath, a canvas of infinite black, capturing a man on the edge of surrender, where the faintest glow could either rekindle or extinguish the last embers of his soul. A single candle flickered faintly on the battered wooden table, casting undulating shadows against the cracked plaster walls of Jack Sullivan's dim room. The air hung heavy, infused with the lingering scent of damp earth and old paper, a fragile sanctuary amid the chaos that had seized his soul. Jack sat hunched, the dog curled at his feet, warm and silent, a steadfast presence in the suffocating silence. Before him, the letter lay unfolded, a fragile bridge between worlds, stained with time and the unspoken weight of secrets. Jack's eyes, glassy and distant, traced the faded ink, searching desperately for a meaning that might anchor the fragments of his unraveling self. Outside, rain fell in whispered rhythms, tapping tenderly against the windowpane, as if to lull the night itself to peace. The glow of the orange horizon beyond the glass bled faintly across the floor, an ember of a sun setting slowly beneath the earth, vast, serene, yet fleeting. His fingers trembled, brushing the edges of the letter, the crumpled paper a tactile reminder of promises long deferred. The old army badge pinned discreetly to his jacket caught the candlelight, a gleam of hard-earned honor amidst the shrouded grief. In the quiet, a memory surfaced, brief and piercing: the stray dog's first hesitant approach, the warmth of a shared breath beneath an indifferent sky, the flicker of companionship amidst isolation. Jack's voice broke the silence, hoarse and fragile. "Is there still a way?" The dog stirred slightly, nuzzling against his hand, a small gesture of unwavering faith and patient comfort. His gaze lifted to the letter once more, stopping at a line halfway obscured, a question left unanswered: "Where do we go from here?" That unanswered question hung in the air, a silent seed planted in the fertile darkness of his despair. The room seemed to hold its breath as Jack folded the letter slowly, deliberately, his action steady despite the tremor of vulnerability coursing through him. Outside, the wind pressed softly against the walls, carrying whispers of uncharted paths and dawns yet to come. In that fragile sanctuary, amid shadows and the quiet pulse of steadfast loyalty, a flicker of resilience kindled, a faint, trembling light awakening within the depths of Jack Sullivan's weary heart. And as the candle's flame steadied against the dark, the story paused, not in surrender, but on the cusp of fragile renewal, a breath held poised between despair and hope. The night awaited, expansive and quiet, the whisper of possibility, a gentle specter guiding a man toward the dawn of his next journey. The dawn crept softly through the cracks in the wooden blinds, spilling pale light onto the worn surfaces of Jack Sullivan's small room. Dust motes floated lazily in the still air, illuminated like tiny kingdoms adrift in a silent realm. The warmth of the early sun was gentle but insistent, brushing away some of the cold shadows that had clung to Jack's heart for so long. He sat at the edge of an old armchair, weathered and frayed, the stray dog settled quietly at his feet. The soft rise and fall of its breathing was a steady rhythm beneath the fragile light, a grounding presence in the quiet solitude. Jack's fingers rested lightly on the crumbled letter between them, a fragile thread connecting him to a friend long lost, whose words carried secrets and the weight of forgotten days. Outside, autumn revealed itself fully in a riot of amber and gold leaves pirouetting down in delicate spirals, blanketing the earth with soft rustles that whispered of change. The distant hum of the small town waking, a low murmur of life stirring past the heavy silence that had so often cocooned him, carved a lyrical cadence into the morning lull. Jack's eyes narrowed slightly, tracing the faded script, reading anew as if the letter held not just words but a map out of darkness. Each line peeled back layers of sorrow and regret, laying bare the hidden truths that had haunted him through the years. A sudden breeze filtered in, lifting loose strands of hair from Jack's furrowed brow and rustling the edges of the letter. It felt, momentarily, like a breath of forgiveness from the past, a subtle invitation to begin again. He lifted his gaze, meeting the dog's steady eyes. There was something unspoken there, an ember of resilience flickering amidst ashes. "Maybe there's more yet to find," Jack whispered, voice rough but carrying the weight of quiet resolve. The dog leaned into the touch of his hand, a small, affirming gesture that spoke volumes beyond the sparse words. Outside his window, the broken fence, once a symbol of fracture and isolation, caught shafts of warm light, the splintered wood softened under the caress of morning. It no longer looked like a barrier but a line drawn in dust, where old wounds might slowly begin to heal. Jack inhaled deeply, the scent of damp earth and dried leaves filling his lungs as a fragile hope began to kindle inside, a flickering shadow in the depths of despair, a first breath towards transformation. The day stretched ahead, uncertain and textured with ghostly echoes and tentative truths, but lit now by a dawning possibility. And as the stray dog rose and padded softly outside, its silhouette framed by the golden light, Jack felt stirred by the fragile yet undeniable sense that this slow unfolding was the first step towards something worthy of redemption. The morning mist clung softly to the sleepy town as Jack Sullivan followed the stray dog down the gravel path leading toward the local sheriff's office. The air was crisp, infused with the scent of dew-damp earth and fading autumn leaves. Somewhere unseen, a crow cawed a stark, ragged sound carving through the gentle silence. The town was waking slowly, yet Jack's heart thudded with urgency, a steady drumbeat against the gnawing weight of apprehension. In his hand, he clutched the fragile letter edges worn, ink faded but words vivid with the power to unravel long-hidden shadows. With every step, Jack felt the past pressing in, the string of memory pulling taut against the grit of the present. His weathered fingers tightened around the dog's leash, the creature's steadfast presence a tether to this moment of courage. The sheriff's office loomed ahead, an aging brick building crowned with peeling paint and solemn windows, a bastion of authority amid whispers and secrets. Jack paused, inhaling deeply, the cool air filling his lungs with a resolve he hadn't summoned in years. Inside, the sheriff sat behind a heavy desk cluttered with paperwork and faded photographs, eyes sharp but lined with weariness. Jack's arrival was met with a measured Luca mixture of curiosity and guarded suspicion that spoke of many histories unspoken. The veteran's voice, roughened by time and struggle, broke the quiet. "I have something you need to see." He unfolded the letter with care, smoothing the creases as if to ease the weight of its contents. The sheriff's brows furrowed as he scanned the faded sentences, revelations threading through the room like a slow, creeping light uncovering long-buried truths. Questions hung, pointed and unspoken, about loyalty, loss, and shadows stretching across years and lives intertwined. Jack met the sheriff's gaze steadily. "This letter. It changes everything." Outside, the sun struggled to break through an overcast sky, shafts of light intermittently piercing the gloom, a visual echo of Jack's own fractured hope. As moments stretched taut, the air thick with anticipation and unvoiced fears, the dog settled at Jack's feet, its steady breathing a quiet anthem of unwavering companionship. The sheriff looked up, voice low but firm. "You walked through hell to bring this to light. There's danger here, but burying it won't help anyone." Jack nodded slowly, the scales tipping between doubt and determination. "I'm ready to face whatever comes." The room seemed to pulse with an electric blend of fear and possibility. Outside, the first true ray of sunlight broke fully through the clouds, bathing the weathered town in a golden glow that shimmered like a fragile benediction. Jack Sullivan felt the fragile yet unyielding stirrings of redemption, light-piercing, relentless darkness, courage rising despite the shadows. In this crucible of revelation and reckoning, he stood poised not as a man broken by past demons, but as one steeling himself for the battle ahead. The path was uncertain, the stakes high, yet beneath the warm wash of morning light, the tentative resolve burned bright. And as dog and man walked side by side from the sheriff's office, their silhouettes framed by a sky unfolding with promise, a newfound chapter began, heavy with truth, but alive with hope. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a rich tapestry of amber and gold across the fading fields surrounding the small town. Jack Sullivan stood at the edge of the old country road, the heat of the day softened by the cool brush of evening breeze. His silhouette, framed against the horizon, radiated a quiet strength born not just of resilience, but of profound transformation. The worn military jacket clung to his broad shoulders, the faded badge glistening faintly, a symbol both of past burdens and newfound purpose. Behind him, the stray dog padded calmly, their loyal companion through the shadows and light of Jack's journey. The dog's steady presence mirrored the steadfast resolve in Jack's eyes, a bond forged in hardship and trust. Jack's gaze swept over the familiar landscape, the broken fences standing weathered but no longer fractured barriers, the rusted tools half buried in the earth now witnesses to endurance rather than decay. The small town, bathed in the soft glow of twilight, seemed to hold its breath, as though the very air itself acknowledged the moment of reckoning. His mind drifted briefly to the ghosts that had haunted him, silent faces in the swirling dust of distant battlefields, the weight of regrets too long carried alone. But beneath the weight, a light had grown, steadfast as the sun slipping below the trees. Turning toward the dusty path leading to the sheriff's office, Jack's steps were measured, grounded. In his hand, he held the mysterious letter, the key to unlocking not just hidden truths but a tangled web of justice and redemption. He had unearthed secrets that challenged the fabric of the community, truths that some wished to keep buried. As he approached the town hall, the windows reflecting the fading light, Jack inhaled deeply, steadied by the dog's quiet companionship. His voice, when it came, was low but unyielding. No more running. No more hiding. It's time to set things right. The weight of his confession was met with wary eyes and whispered suspicions, but few could deny the courage radiating from this man who had stared his past down and emerged unbroken. Relentlessly, Jack presented the letter's contents, names woven in secrecy, plans threatening the fragile peace of the town, connections that rippled beyond the surface. Each revelation brought shock, but also led to unanticipated alliances, the fractured pieces beginning to coalesce into a story of courage and community. In the face of adversity, Jack's resolve shone brighter, the ember of his spirit growing into a steady flame. His steps, once tentative and burdened by memories, now carried the force of a man claiming his placenet just among the living, but among those who dared to confront the darkness and refuse fear's dominion. Under the expansive sky, streaked with the last fading light, Jack Sullivan found not only the redemption he sought but a powerful purpose to defend the truth and protect the fragile bonds of his small town. As the evening shadows deepened, the dog stood loyally by his side, heads aligned, silent sentinels watching over a world forever changed. The camera lingered on Jack's steady gaze, calm and resolute, poised at the brink of healing and justice, a man transformed. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, a burst of fading orange bled across the sky, signaling closure and new beginnings, the serene image sealing his journey in quiet majesty. The sun hung low, casting a warm, golden glow over the small town that had witnessed Jack Sullivan's quiet transformation. The earth beneath his feet was soft with the crushed leaves of autumn, and the air was tinged with the scent of distant rains and fresh wood smoke, familiar, grounding, and rich with the promises of a day fading gently into evening. Jack sat alone on a weathered bench nested beneath an ancient oak whose branches stretched wide, casting mottled shadows over the cracked pathway. He didn't rush. His breath was steady, measured, in rhythm with the slow pulse of life unfurling all around him. His fingers traced absent-mindedly over the old army badge pinned loosely to his jacket, a symbol heavy with memory but now worn with a different kind of pride. For the first time in years, those memories no longer dragged him into a swirling abyss but rested like soft, muted echoes played gently under the quiet symphony of his present. Scattered footsteps echoed in the distance, a faint murmur of voices carrying across the fading light. Children laughed nearby, their carefree joy a poignant contrast to the solemnity etched across Jack's weathered face. Yet, in his eyes shone a subtle light of fragile warmth born of redemption earned and pain endured. The stray dog, loyal companion and silent witness, lay curled at his feet, eyes half-closed but alert to the soft rustle of the world. Jack's hand rested quietly on the dog's back, the gesture tender but firm, a wordless affirmation of the journey they endured together. He reached into his pocket, pulling forth the crumpled letter, the fulcrum of untold secrets and unveiled truths. Its edges were softened by touch and time, the ink faded but unyielding. He smoothed it carefully against his palm, a bittersweet reminder that while the past shaped him, it no longer imprisoned him. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying with it the delicate rustling of leaves and the distant call of a cardinal. Jack's eyes lifted slowly, drinking in the golden horizon where earth and sky blended in hues of amber and lavender, a breathtaking canvas alive with the promise of continuity and renewal. In this peaceful moment, unadorned and raw, Jack felt the heavy cloak of burden begin to unravel, thread by precious thread. Silence enfolded him, not a silence of absence, but one of acceptance and understanding. In it, he found space to breathe, to reflect, and to begin once again. The warmth of the setting sun kissed his weathered face, tracing lines not as marks of defeat, but as the cartography of a soul reclaimed. With a soft exhale, Jack rose, shoulders squared beneath the fading light. The dog rose too, tail wagging gently, their bond a steadfast beacon cutting through the twilight. Together, they walked slowly along the leaf-strewn path, steps echoing softly in the hush of evening. And as the final rays melted into the embrace of a tranquil dusk, Jack Sullivan carried with him not just the weight of a past confronted, but the lightness of new beginnings stirred by the quiet grace of understanding and hope. The evening light deepened into a gentle amber wash, casting a golden hue over the familiar contours of the small town. Jack Sullivan walked slowly along the worn path near the edge of the woods that bordered the outskirts of his home, the stray dog matching his steady pace, their figures framed by the soft glow of twilight. The air was crisp with the scent of earth and fallen leaves, a natural perfume that wrapped around Jack like a quiet benediction. Each step disturbed a scattering of brittle leaves, their rustling a gentle accompaniment to the steady rhythm of his breath. The weight of the past, once suffocating, now felt tempered, subdued beneath the fragile strength growing within. His hand instinctively reached for the old army badge pinned to the pocket of his weathered jacket. The metal was cool and familiar beneath his fingers, a symbol not just of battles fought but of a life reclaimed. The badge caught the fading light, reflecting soft sparks as if igniting sparks of renewal. Jack's gaze lifted toward the horizon where the sun hovered just above the treetops, a slow, golden orb that seemed to bathe the world in warmth both eternal and ever-changing. The sky bloomed with hues of orange and rose, blurring the line between earth and heaven, past and future. Beside him, the dog paused, lifting its head as if sensing the significance of the moment. The bond between man and creature, forged through loneliness and shared endurance, pulsed quietly like a heartbeat against the vast stillness. Jack inhaled deeply, drawing in the cool evening air, carrying away lingering doubts and fears. The scars tracing his face, both seen and hidden, seemed less like chains and more like maps, each a milestone marking a passage through pain toward peace. His voice broke the silence, low and steady, "I've been given a second chance. And maybe that's all any of us can ask for." The dog nudged his leg gently, a silent affirmation of the road still ahead, walked together, step by deliberate step. Nearby, an old fence, once broken and forgotten, now stood quietly repaired. Its rough wood bore the marks of care and healing, a tangible echo of the changes within Jack himself. The image lingered in his Minda metaphor for mending fractures not just in structures but in hearts and lives. The gentle murmur of a stream nearby wove through the twilight, a soft chanson of beginnings and endings, always flowing, always persistent. Jack stopped, turning to face the fading light fully. His eyes glistened softly, reflecting not only the sunset but a profound acceptance, a reconciliation with the past and an openness to the future. In this moment, every heavy step of the journey was distilled into a simple truth: that forgiveness, both given and received, could unlock the doors thought forever closed. With a quiet smile, Jack reached down to scratch behind the dog's ears, their shared gaze a silent pact forged in the warmth of companionship and newfound hope. The last light softened further, settling like a tender benediction over two souls walking together through the landscape of healing. And as the stars began to stitch silver threads into the night's deep blue velvet, Jack Sullivan carried with him a heart unburdened, a spirit reignited, and the precious truth that even the deepest wounds can yield to grace. The world whispered onward in its timeless rhythm, holding space for endings woven with beginnings, and dreams rekindled beneath the vast, forgiving sky. The sky blushed with the fading glow of the setting sun, a vast canvas painted in hues of burnt orange, soft magentas, and deepening purples, stretching endlessly over the tranquil landscape that cradled the small town. Jack Sullivan walked slowly along the familiar dirt path that curled around the hillside, the grass brushing gently at his worn boots. Beside him, the stray dog moved in steady companionship, its presence a living echo of the journey they had traversed together. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves above, whispering through the branches and releasing a soft, rustling symphony that mingled with the fading chirp of cicadas settling into the dusk. Jack's breath caught briefly as a fluttering golden leaf spiraled down, coming to rest near his feet, an unspoken symbol of change, letting go, and quiet rebirth. His hand instinctively reached down, fingers brushing through the dog's fur. The warmth beneath his touch felt like a balm to the scars time had carved beneath the surface. The dog lifted its head, eyes meeting Jack's with an unspoken understanding and acknowledgement forged not just through months of companionship but through the shared weight of untold stories and silent battles. The old army badge, now tucked beneath his shirt, was invisible to the world but heavy with significance to Jack himself. It pulsed silently, a reminder not only of past sacrifices but of resilience reclaimed. Ahead, the path opened onto a grassy knoll overlooking the valley below, where the town's rooftops gleamed faintly beneath the first stars pricking the twilight. Jack stopped, taking in the soft expanse, the breath of wind carrying the scents of earth and distant wood fires, of homes and histories intertwined. He breathed deeply, the air filling his lungs with both the weight of what had been and the lightness of what could be. In that suspended, sacred space, the quiet settled fully around him. Not as emptiness but as fullness, the fullness of acceptance, of wounds that had been tended, and of futures quietly unfolding. He knelt slowly at the side of his faithful companion, resting his forehead against the dog's warm muzzle. Their breaths mingled, a gentle rhythm in the vast calm. Silence spoke in the language of shared solace as the sun dipped below the horizon, a golden ember fading into the embrace of twilight. The world exhaled softly, the moment crystallized like a fragile jewel, an unhurried heartbeat poised between past and tomorrow. Jack rose, the cool evening wrapping around him like a shroud no longer heavy but comforting. Step by careful step, he and the dog moved onward, shadows lengthening as night claimed the land. No words were spoken, none were needed. The final frame held steady, a man and his companion walking side by side beneath an endless sky, bathed in the tender glow of peace Hardwin. And as darkness deepened, the horizon blushed one last time in a quiet farewell, leaving a lingering promise that some wounds can indeed heal, carried gently by the light of unexpected kindness and enduring love. Could you turn away from a mysterious letter? Share your thoughts below.